And I had to kind of get over some of these fears that I had that are normal, that everybody has about dark and creepy places. But it's such like a perfect analogy that there aren't just places that we avoid in our homes that we kind of know nothing about, but that are really important, frankly, to the infrastructure of how it works. But that we have these dark and creepy places in our whole lives that we're kind of afraid of. Welcome to the Yes or No podcast, where we explore what it means to be rooted in our own authority. I'm your host, Jessica Sevol. Thank you so much for being here today. In today's episode, I tell you a little bit more about me, and then we get into some dark and creepy places. Dark and creepy places. It's actually kind of funny to me because I don't talk a whole lot about what it is that I do day to day for work to pay the bills, to earn a living. But I have kind of an interesting job. It's definitely a dirty job. I work as a contractor. I work in sort of a home services space, attics, which are above the house, crawl spaces below, insulation, drainage problems, mold problems, rat problems. And I think that at this point, I've been doing it so long, I don't find it all that interesting. It's just what I'm used to. But I recognize that for a lot of people, it's still pretty weird. So this last weekend, I was with a friend and she invited me to come to this really kind of cool art project that was happening not really far downtown from my house. And I usually get pretty intimidated about art. I don't ever feel that. I guess I don't get really excited about it, but this one was pretty fun. It was a particular type of art called neurographica and neurographics or neurographia. And it's this kind of idea that you can maybe soothe your brain or calm your brain or sort of discover things about yourself with these very specific types of drawing techniques. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was much more engaging than I had expected. I actually found myself feeling pretty calm about it. And I really enjoyed the conversation with some of the other people who were at my table who I had not ever met before, but we ended up, I guess, really kind of finding things that we related around while we sat and drew and colored and enjoyed peaceful time. So after we got done with our drawing, which went on for lots of hours, actually, it went by really fast, which was sort of surprising to me because I feel like I can get bored or impatient with those sort of small menial tasks, but I really enjoyed this. So it must be a particular technique that works, and I think I'm going to keep trying to do it, maybe every now and then. But we all walked across the street and decided to go get food because it was getting kind of late. So several of us walked across the street. And one of the women who was there is a friend who I've known for quite some time, and she knows me pretty well. I know her pretty well. And another lady whose name was pretty unique. I just had this strange feeling, and I've actually met her not that long ago in a different space. And she happened to mention that she lived not that far from me. For some reason, it made me think of a client who I had worked for a while ago, quite a while ago, several years ago, in two different homes, the one she was selling and then later on the one that she purchased that both needed work. And the other friend who was there, I realized I'd been in both of their crawl spaces in multiple different times. And it was kind of funny when I made the connection that I happened to know the other one through this other version of me, right? This other side of me, the side of me that gears up and crawls under dark and creepy places. And we were kind of laughing because it sounds like a little bit dirty that I've been in all their crawl spaces, and everyone was like just having a great time. And it helps me to realize how multifaceted all of us are. But it did remind me that these dark and creepy places, they're not just underneath people's homes, they're kind of like this emotional place too. And it's what's fascinated me since I first started doing this work. There was a couple of things that happened right away and that have happened consistently over time. The first is that because I work in a primarily male dominated field, just by virtue of the fact that I show up, it sort of startles people. And I used to get a lot of comments. I've been doing it for almost a decade now. So some of the commentary has changed, but I used to get a lot of comments about, oh my gosh, you're going to go down there? You're going to go down there? Oh, I could never do that. I could never go down there. People used to say that all the time. I could never do that. I could never do that. And it always kind of made me giggle because I thought, of course you could. Anybody could. Anybody could go down there. If you had an important enough reason, you could honestly, most of us could do anything. And we could definitely do things that we did not think that we could do. And to me, it was absolutely terrifying in the beginning. It was absolutely scary. But it was a way for me to support my family. It was a way for me to have a family supporting income. It was a well-paying job in creepy places. But it's such like a perfect analogy that there aren't just places that we avoid in our homes that we kind of know nothing about, but that are really important, frankly, to the infrastructure of how it works. But that we have these dark and creepy places in our whole lives that we're kind of afraid of, and there's a lot of them for people. There's obviously asking to be in a relationship with someone. There's wanting to become a parent. There's wanting to have a more intimate relationship. It's all of the things that are so hard to talk about, our different belief systems and the things that we long for, and our different religious beliefs and beliefs about spirituality and our childhoods and our upbringings and the way we feel about sex and sensuality and so many things. So many things are dark and creepy places for us. And I think that it's been a really kind of advantageous opportunity for me because in a really practical sense, every day for so many years, I've gone into the dark and creepy places. And I realize it's kind of an exercise. It's like anything else. It gets easier the longer that you do it. For me, it's easy because there's just problems to solve. There's just things to look for. And everyone always says, don't you get freaked out? Yeah, sometimes I do. Well, isn't it disgusting? Yes, sometimes it is. Aren't you scared of the things that could be down there? Certainly. But when there's a job to be done and it's my job to do it, you have to put a lot of those concerns aside and just kind of get to work. And I think that is the case about so much. And, when I think about like the scary things I've done in my life or the positions I've put myself into that were scary, I thought it would be a really exhilarating and terrifying thing to skydive. And so one year I did. And it was exhilarating. I actually didn't find it particularly terrifying. I think I realized for me that the emotional stuff that I had to deal with it was actually a way, way, way more terrifying thing to face. So I didn't learn that much about myself when I jumped out of a plane. I know some people do, but I didn't. I thought, well, that was neat. I don't think I'd probably do it again. Maybe, I don't know. But I didn't have any type of a life-changing experience from it because that wasn't nearly as hard as a lot of the other stuff that I've had to do in my life. Like the most terrifying, challenging stuff for me has been making really big decisions and living with the consequences of them. Fighting for my right to be myself, to live the way that makes sense to me, to be able to be in environments that were safe, where people were kind. It's so fascinating how, physical danger, like the type that occurs when you jump out of a plane, it wasn't nearly as terrifying as I expected. It was exhilarating, but not terrifying. And I think about that because there are these areas for all of us in our lives that are the dark and creepy places. It's kind of the places we don't really want to go. We don't really want to deal with. But so often it could be kind of like when I go underneath your home and I see that you have a bunch of things stored that you'd completely forgotten about, and maybe they're important to you and you would like to have them. Or it could be that something's going really wrong. And the earlier that you catch it, the easier it is to fix, the less expensive it is. It's like everything in our lives, it all takes maintenance. It all takes know-how. It all takes awareness and education and learning and being a little bit brave. So our conversation was really funny because I really do go into the dark and creepy places. I really have checked out a lot of people's crawl spaces, and it's actually way dirtier than it sounds because there's literally dirt down there, a lot of dirt. Where I live on the west coast of the U.S., we have very specific ways we build things, and so as time has gone by, we have less basements, which are much more common in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, and so we build a little bit differently. And so we have, basically like the guts of the house, the things that kind of keep it all going. So the plumbing that carries the water and the waste, the electricity that brings in the power. Sometimes the way that we keep our houses warm through different types of furnaces and also, keeping it warm efficiently and with insulation. All of these things happen, they all occur outside of the space that we actually live in. They can be underneath, they can be above, they can be on the sides, but they're all different. They're all in different places than what we see every single day. It's always fascinating to me how much of it we're unaware of until someone brings it to our attention. You know, it's very similar to what I experienced when I was very disassociated from my body. There's all of this stuff happening, and we really don't pay attention to it because we barely recognize that it is even there. And the more I have gone into people's homes and gone into their dark and creepy places, and I'm always so fascinated by who wants to follow me and who wants to be as far away from it as possible, that doesn't want to know anything about what's happening. Because everybody's different. Some people want more information. When I first started, one of my favorite things was that I could tell that a lot of my homeowners that hadn't maybe felt particularly, I don't know, they hadn't really felt empowered about their homes. A lot of times they would kind of follow me. They'd say, "Can I look?" And I'm like, of course you can. This is your home. Of course you can look. And they would go, "Wow, I had no idea it looked like this up here." Or "I had no idea all of this was going on down there." And I liked it when people would want to ask more questions and they would get kind of excited and kind of interested because I knew that, well, a couple of good things were happening. One of the good things that was happening is that they were feeling more in control and more empowered about their home, which I love because it's where we spend so much of our time. It's so much usually of our income that is spent. And really, the condition of it, it matters. I have a sort of a perspective of homes that when I look at them, I want to make them healthy. And there's usually enough going on that I have to think about it in a pretty holistic way. Well, how are things impacting each other? How is one portion of this either benefiting or negatively impacting another portion of this? How do we get everything to work together? And my goal when I've, you know, looked at a home is we're going to have it be clean. We're going to have it be pest free. It's going to be safe. It's going to be energy efficient. It's going to be reliable. It's going to save money. It's going to be comfortable. All of this stuff, it works together. And I think I've kind of enjoyed the process of understanding more and more because our homes, where we live, where we spend our time, they're so personal. And no matter who you are, we know some things about our homes, and there's a lot that we don't understand. There's a lot that we don't know. And it's like anything, the more the better it goes. So I realize I haven't talked a lot about that so far in these episodes that I have released, the other work that I do or the actual work I get paid for to do. I am a contractor and I didn't plan to be. I'm an accidental contractor, an accidental pest control professional. But I found my way here because of need and because of a leap of faith that, I could figure it out. If I needed to, I could learn it. I could figure it out. And I have enjoyed it. And I think that it has really been a good thing. I realized after I counted it up over the last, well, it's been a lot of years now that I've been doing this. I've been in at least 10,000 different people's homes here in this region, inside their homes. Looked at them, evaluated them, provided advice, provided solutions, helped, gotten work done, given them advice if they don't need me, tried to point them in the right direction, heard the saddest, saddest of stories, heard some of the most incredible and happy of stories. People moving, people's lives shifting, people's spouses passing away, people moving on, people moving up, people moving out, people scaling down. And I have loved it because it's really a privilege. It's really a privilege to get to see inside people's worlds, and our homes are often so much of our life happens there. And there's so much about it I wish I'd known when I was younger because getting to see firsthand what it is that people live, how they live and what they live like and what things look like, I think it would have been a lot easier on myself. I've learned so much. And it's been really fun because everybody kind of has these dark and creepy places, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their educational status, regardless of their political affiliation. You know, people want to enjoy their time in their homes. They want to feel safe. They want to feel comfortable. They really, really want for the best things in life when they're inside their homes: love and belonging and connection, and to feel good and to have nice environment. And it's been a privilege to get to be a little bit of a part of that for people over the years. And there's a few universal things that I know now that I didn't know before. The most shocking thing to me is a lot of people really feel disconnected. They really, really feel like the world is kind of happening and they're not totally sure how they fit. The second one that fascinates me is people they love, and everybody, they want to live in a place of love and of peace and of harmony. People's stories, when they tell me, they're the most heartbreaking, they're the most sad. The people who are struggling the most to deal with loss, they're ones who loved really deeply. They had a relationship that they found so fulfilling, that they found so loving. It doesn't mean it was, always easy or always perfect or always great. In fact, it's the opposite. When people really expressed this deep, deep, deep connection and this deep love that they had for someone, it's because they'd actually been through hard stuff, and stuck it out, come out the other side, maybe. I've been in people's homes when they've lost the home before in tragic circumstances, post-fire, post-flood, been ripped off by a contractor, been left in dire circumstances. It's so incredible. The human condition is this incredibly complex thing, but it's so fascinating to me because if you meet somebody in their home, it's not their place of work. It's not, well, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. And, it's just where they live. It's just where they are. It's just where they get to be, I think, probably the most vulnerable, probably the most unguarded. And it's been pretty fascinating for me to see. I certainly didn't intend to learn any of this. I just thought I was showing up to help somebody with the problem. But what I realized is that we're never really just showing up to help somebody with the problem. There's always more going on. I think about how often it's the case that people are so complex that everybody's always kind of dealing with something. Everyone's going through something, and everybody has different sets of things that are challenging. And you can't really ever predict You can't really ever assume. It doesn't matter how amazing somebody's home is. You don't know nearly as much about them as you think that you do. One of the most beautiful homes I've ever been in. It was extremely large and very, very, very beautiful and clearly very expensive. And the couple was divorcing. And I remember when I was speaking to her, I never met him, but when I was speaking to her, she says, "I cannot wait to be rid of this place." And he said, "What do you mean? It's so beautiful." She says, "This thing has sucked the life out of me." Her experience of living there was that the house and managing the house was more than a full-time job. She had a staff, and she said that she really hated it, that her whole life was managing the people that managed the house. That was her job, I guess. And apparently, it was not a job she enjoyed. It was not something that she wanted to do. She found it stressful. She said it was overwhelming. At the time I met her, she was moving into I think she said less than 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom condo. And she couldn't have been more excited about it. She said she couldn't wait to have her life back, or she just needed to take care of this small space and it was there to benefit her, not the other way around. And I just thought, what an incredibly different perspective than I would have assumed, right? I would have assumed that she was that she loved it. I mean, it was so beautiful. Nope, she couldn't wait to be rid of it. And obviously, that's not the case for everybody, but it's always surprising to me what I learn about people because they start to talk to me and they start to open up and they start to tell me things while I'm there, and it's really amazing. It's really amazing how similar, like how much commonality we all actually have, you know, regardless of how it is that we think we need to get to a place, or regardless of what it is that how we grew up or what our plans are or what we want. Most people just want to be happy. Some people have a better understanding of how to get that for themselves than others. And I've learned that you really don't know. Every time I think I'm starting to kind of get the hang of it, oh yeah, I kind of know what's going on here. I don't. I can't tell how people will treat me by pulling up to their house. I can't tell how they'll treat each other. I can't tell whether they're happy. I actually can't also tell how much money they have. I have worked on people's homes who lived in amazingly beautiful homes and they were selling them because they were bankrupt. And I've worked in people's extremely small and modest homes that had enough resources that they would never have to think about money ever again in their entire life, nor would anyone that they knew if they chose to benefit the people around them that way. You can't tell. You really can't tell. You really can't tell that much about people just from the surface, just from the outside, just from where they live, just from where what they have. You really can't tell. But the one thing that has been so interesting is the dark and creepy places people have such different reactions to. Some people are aware. Some people go in their dark and creepy places all the time. I'm always fascinated by the person that's like, oh yeah, I'm usually down in that crawl space all the time, checking on things, thinking about things, working on things. And other people didn't know it was there until someone told them. We all have different awarenesses. But it just reminds me again and again that all of us, no matter what it is that we're doing, no matter where it is that we work, no matter what it is that we have, no matter where it is that we've gone or where we want to go, we're all so unique, but by being humans, we're all actually also very, very, very alike. Very alike. I'm always so surprised that most homes I go into are set up almost exactly the same. There's some variation, but most of the time people use the parts of their house the way that it seems like they were intended to be used. Some people have some variation, but not a lot. It's pretty rare that someone's cooking in their bedroom and sleeping in the kitchen, right? Or even sleeping in the living room and hanging out in the bedroom. I mean, most people use these spaces for their purposes that they seem to have been built for, which I find fascinating because we don't have to, but most people do. And again, you can tell so much about people, and it's pretty great. So it was really fun meeting again with a couple of different women whose homes I've crawled underneath and learned about, and they have different ages of home and they have these different, situations and different crawl spaces. And to me, it's funny because I'll remember a lot of details about them, about these places that I've gone into. Partly because it's my work, it's my job to notice, it's my job to have an understanding of what's going on so that I can try to help if help needs to be a part of it. But they were kind of giggling. We were all giggling that, I go into people's crawl spaces. And I used to feel so intimidated and almost kind of like embarrassed. I don't know why, but I just didn't really want people to know what I did. I thought it was weird, kind of, in the beginning. I'm not a particularly like rough and tumble person. I wear pink shoes to work. I have been since I started. There was this need that I had to hold on to at the time, I think what felt like my softness and my femininity while gearing up to get to work to do some dirty stuff. I get spider webs in my hair. I get fiberglass all over me. I have to see gross things that none of us want to have to see. But it's just like everything, it's necessary. It's necessary to the the before picture is the before picture. But the more I think about this, the more I realize that for me, the reason that I was able to do it is because, it was freedom. For me, the benefit to going into the dark and creepy places is that by doing it, I was able to support my family. And that was so important to me. It wasn't always the case that it was easy for me to support my family. I struggled a lot for a really long time. I have a story about this, but I knew how to make my own laundry detergent, and I was extremely good at um, budgeting and figuring out how to do more with less financial resources. And I don't really feel like I suffered because of it, but I did have to get really creative. I did read a lot of books about, actually Amish cookbooks are pretty phenomenal when you're trying to eat on a really tiny budget. I definitely learned my way around oatmeal and popcorn and, gosh, what else? Dry noodles, rice. I mean, there's so many things that, I learned how to do because I had to, because I didn't have the financial resources for a long time, especially when my children were little, to really purchase a lot. And so I had to get very creative. But I think about it and I realized that I was learning a lot and I really value it now. But at the time, it made me feel small. Not having resources made me feel small. And I think when I started this job, I was still in that place. For example, if I needed to get shampoo, it was definitely going to be the smallest bottle I could find with a coupon. So it would bring the price down as much as possible. And then I would, be able to buy a couple. But I never could I couldn't like walk into the store, and buy like the big shampoo or something. I just couldn't do that. There wasn't any time where I could grab something off the shelf and not need to know, what the price per ounce was, so that I could make sure I was getting the best possible deal on it in order to try to make it stretch and make it work. I was extremely conscious of all the pennies. I remember one day after this job that I had to gear up in, I had to get dirty to do. I had to go to the dark and creepy places. But after a while, I started to have more and more and more financial stability. And it happened kind of quickly that I didn't have to look at every single penny, but I didn't really recognize it as it was happening, because sometimes this is the way that it goes. Your circumstances are changing, but you're not completely conscious of it every minute. And one day I had to run into the store to grab a couple of things, one of them being shampoo. And I happened to run up to the shelf and I grabbed the biggest shampoo that they had, because I was realizing I didn't want to have to come back to the store and we needed it. And so I just grabbed it and I was standing in line and I happened to look down and I saw, in this basket, this great big shampoo. And I kind of couldn't believe it. Like, oh my God, I didn't even have to think about that. I just bought the big shampoo. I'm just going to buy the big shampoo. It's not going to make a difference in my budget for this day, this week, this month, whether or not I bought the little shampoo or the big shampoo. Holy moly. It was the first time that I felt just this overwhelming feeling of gratitude. and accomplishment as well, because I got into this place through some hard work and some discomfort, but I got into a place where I had a little bit of ease. It was easier. It was a little bit easier to shop. It was a little bit easier to keep it all together because I could just get the big shampoo, and that kept me from having to go to the store more often and stock it. And I will never, ever, ever, ever forget it. I will never forget it because it was such a big deal in my life. That day that I went and grabbed that big shampoo and I didn't have to think all that hard about it. I was just could get it. I could just buy it. It helps me to think about it so that I can always be grateful for anything that's a little bit easier now. Because for so long, although I was, again, pretty happy, but there was two things that kind of went with not having a lot of financial resources. One was I felt small. My self-esteem and my self-worth got kind of tied at times to those lack of financial resources. People talked about trips and money and clothes and things that they could buy and, dinners out and going where they were going in a way that I think they thought was accessible to everybody. And of course, they didn't know. It wasn't like I constantly broadcast that stuff wasn't available to me. But I realized that I let it make me feel small. I let it make me feel small. So after I figured out, this job, and I was doing that as a single mom, I remember that big shampoo and I realized something. Even when I've had more resources, it didn't in any way, I recognized that I don't think really about anyone and their resources all that much. If people have more or if they don't, it really doesn't have anything to do with how valuable of a person I think they are at all. And that helps me to realize that people also didn't think that about me. Whether or not I had the money to afford something didn't really have that much to do with my value as a person. It didn't really have that much to do with, what I could add. And I wish I had understood that earlier. I think it would have saved me kind of a lot of pain. It would have saved me a lot of time of feeling really small and really kind of discounted and really just not a part of things. Because if it's hard to explain if you've never been in this situation, but if everybody wants to go to dinner and you want to also spend time with everybody, but going to dinner is so far outside of the realm of possibility because there's no way you can come up with an extra $15, let alone an extra 25. You just don't go. You make up an excuse. Oh gosh, I would love to join you guys. Unfortunately, I just can't make it that night. Like, no, I have zero plans. I would love to go. I can't afford to go. I don't have the extra room in the budget. And I was always pretty careful with my financial language. I didn't like to say that I couldn't afford it. I would usually say to myself, it's not in the budget. It's not in the budget. Now, granted, there was very, very, very little that was in the budget. It was absolutely necessities, but I still use the same terminology for myself now. It's not in the budget. Maybe someday it will be, but right now it's not in the budget. To remind myself that sometimes it's in the budget, sometimes it's not. If I planned for it and it's in the budget, great. If I didn't plan for it, well, it's not in the budget. But for me, man, getting into those dark and creepy places has been rewarding. It's been rewarding. And it makes me kind of giggle now. I'm far enough removed from the beginnings of it that I don't really feel shame about it. Although at times in the beginning I did. People would make weird comments like, oh, well, what kind of girl are you that you would go under here? And I would definitely be called girl a lot, which I thought was kind of weird. For a while, I actually ran this little website called The Rat Girl because some people kept saying, oh, you're the rat girl. You show up to deal with my rat problem. I'm like, well, technically, I go into the part of your home where that might be going on, but I don't specifically deal with it. I just prescribe solutions for it. But I didn't really care. If you want to call me, you can call me that, I guess, because I'm happy to help with the things that need to be done. I kind of always laughingly would say, well, I'm a mom. This isn't that hard compared to that. I've definitely done grosser stuff as a mom. Or, like I have friends who are nurses and I think, gosh, they have plenty of stuff in their jobs that's gross. Like, it's amazing how much it is that we're willing to deal with and we're willing to do, um, out of need, out of necessity, out of interest. But a lot of the times, there's a lot of reward. There's a lot of reward in, you know, kind of being able to go into these dark and creepy places in the world or in our lives. Not dangerous places, but ones where we're just not really sure what's down there. I don't know. Yeah, that's okay. Get a really bright flashlight. A really bright flashlight makes every dark and creepy place not nearly as dark and not nearly as creepy. There are the same few things that are there all the time. I'm anticipating them. I'm expecting them. I have run into big animals. I have run into raccoons and possums and a lot of cats, which their eyes glow from across the crawl space in the dark, and it scares me every single time. I have seen rats. I have seen mice. I have seen dead things. And it's like everything else. It's just kind of part of life, It's just part of life. Animals, they also want to be warm and cozy. And a lot of times these spaces by default are that for them. So, the dark and the creepy places, the more you know, the better it goes, I think. So it was really fun. It was really fun to realize that I find it silly now and kind of hilarious. I've been in your guys' crawl spaces. I've gone into these weird parts of your home and you're my friends and we just went to an art class and it's all good. It's all good. It's all good stuff because we do whatever it is that we have to do, right? Shame not welcome here. I've done lots of stuff in my life that was plenty unpleasant and plenty not that fun, but sometimes it's necessary. I have had babies and a lot of that is gross. I mean, babies are beautiful and amazing and wonderful, but that was a lot of spit up and changing diapers and unexpected blowouts on, trips. And it's just life. And life is kind of messy. And sometimes, I don't know. It's okay, though. It's okay. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be afraid of it. It's okay to do it anyway. And I think for me, the more I've been able to embrace all of these different versions of myself, all of these different layers of myself, the more I bring all of it into the picture. And I guess, by talking about all of this, there's kind of more clarity. But I've benefited so much from it. I've benefited so much from it. I don't feel embarrassed at all, actually. I think it's pretty great. And I wish that I had known earlier how great it was. I could have spent less time feeling kind of embarrassed. So that's just what I wanted to share today. I'll go in your crawl space too if you want. There's definitely a lot you can learn down there. Or, maybe up above. Maybe you have an attic and you don't really know what's up there. I'm willing to go in there. Happy to tell you what's up. I even take pictures. Which I think is kind of hilarious. But no, seriously, I think it's kind of our job. It's kind of all of our job, metaphorically and literally, to check out the dark and creepy places. What are we avoiding knowing about? What are we ignorant of? What is it that we don't understand but could? There's no one that's going to give you permission. There's no one that's going to tell you you can or you can't. If it's your home, go look. Or don't. But like everything in our lives, whether it's a relationship and it's a conversation that we're afraid to have, whether there's something that we're really, really wanting, but we don't really know how to get it, whether we need to have, a really uncomfortable conversation or a really beautiful conversation, or we're afraid or we're scared or we're excited or we feel small. All of these things, all of them, they're worth it. I really think that it's worth it. I think it's worth it. The discomfort, there's often a reward. And the things we avoid don't get better. And honestly, what I know is that the little bit of maintenance that these spaces take, man, it's worth its weight in gold, because when they get messed up, when like the critters move in, when the things start to fall apart, when a pipe bursts, when, it all gets damaged, it's so much more costly. It's financially costly, but as a parallel to our emotional lives, it's emotionally costly. It's hard to have a conversation with a partner that we've been putting off for a couple of weeks. It can feel impossible to have a conversation with a partner that we've been putting off for years. And I can't tell you how many people talk to me about that. All the things they wish they would have said, or how long it took them to finally say it, but by then it was too late. Or I can't believe I waited so long to do that. You know, we got to not avoid our dark and creepy places. And, I hope that you'll feel a little bit more empowered and you'll give yourself some permission to do some things you didn't think that you could do, to do some things that feel kind of creepy, to do some things that feel scary or icky. And I think that I think that there's a lot of value in being a little bit outside of our comfort zone, not a lot outside and not right away, but remembering that we don't really know what's going on with anyone else. We really don't. And sometimes we barely know what's going on with ourselves. So, we have to be brave. We have to be a little bit brave. And what I say to people, and this is just the truth, the more gear you get on, the more you can do anything. So whatever that gear looks like for you, for me, it's a respirator and a suit and gloves and, like hair coverings and all of these things, knee pads that make it so that I can safely enter these dark and creepy places. Whatever that looks like for you, suit up, get everything on, protect yourself, and then boldly go, boldly go. Boldly go where you haven't gone before. See what happens. Who knows? Maybe for you, it'll be like it was for me. And it will be the key to the big shampoo. Just grabbing it right off the shelf, sticking it in my basket, and barely even thinking about it. It's pretty nice. I am extremely grateful for it. It's pretty nice. It's easier. It's true. It's easier. And I will never forget all of those times in my life when it was not that way, because it's a little easier. It's a little easier to buy the one big shampoo and not have to go back to the store nearly as often. It's not as life-changing as I thought, but it is pretty nice. So, all right, well, that's it. That's enough for me today. And if you're listening to this, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.